Western journalists always ask me about Putin's red lines.
We have red lines too, and they never ask about those.
You passed your mobilization law, in my opinion, at least a year too late.
I'm not sure it's voluntary. You are in danger of losing your citizenship.
Our road to the EU is closed?
Every country has the right to its own interpretations of history.
Minister, good to see you here in Kyiv again, and thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
Let me start from quoting you. You said recently that Ukraine's resilience is not endless, and let me fully agree with you. But does it mean that currently in this war, time raiser plays not for Ukraine, but against us?
Well, no country could do what you're doing infinitely. We feel for your soldiers who have been at the front, some without being rotated for months and years. And we feel for your people who live in the daily terror of a possible attack. On my way here, I visited Lviv and the site of the Russian strike on a civilian house in which that lovely family was killed, and the father was the only survivor. And by the way, we are going to rebuild one of those townhouses in Lviv, as the Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, has declared.
The time passes. Some people say in the West that we have to be not that fast because Russia is becoming weaker too.
Some economists say that actually the Russian war economy is in full swing. Others point out that the Russians are running out of the hulks of post-Soviet tanks to refurbish. We don't have a full picture. But these kinds of colonial wars historically take some years to resolve.
In any case, we have already spent almost 3 years, and we see that Ukraine pleads our Western partners for lifting some restrictions. It's about deep strikes into Russian territory. It's about other restrictions that partners impose. Do you see that something is changing here?
Tony Blinken was here. He then came to Warsaw. I talked to him. I urged the US and other allies not to put these restrictions on because Russian missile strikes on Ukraine, on Ukrainian dams, on Ukrainian electricity plants, are actually war crimes, and the victim of aggression has the right to defend itself against war crimes. And for the war crimes to stop, you would need to take down the bombers that launch the missiles or the airfields from which they start. And those are a considerable range inside Russia, but they are, in international law, perfectly legitimate military targets.
What do they reply? Because we know all arguments that proves that these strikes should take place, but we do not see actions. What do partners say? How do they justify?
This is a very good question, but to the countries that have those weapons.
But you have heard it.
Sure, and Western journalists always ask me about Putin's red lines and
Putin's threats of escalation, to which I have at least two answers. Number one, we have red lines too, and they never asked about those. And secondly, I don't think that there is anything that Putin is not doing that he will do in response to what we do. He's not.
I would be very surprised if he was mad enough to start a war with NATO. And his threats of using nuclear weapons have also so far been hollow.
We also see that something is lacking from Polish side. It's about air defense. There are plenty of public pleas, including by President Zelensky earlier today, that Poland can finally start helping Ukraine to defend our skies. What is the obstacle?
Well, Poland is on its 45th package of support for Ukraine, about 100 million euros each. We have provided you over 4 billion euros
of assistance, material assistance. We're not counting the support for your
refugees in Poland. Poland has its own needs. We only have 2 Patriot batteries ourselves, and Russian drones and missiles breach Polish territory, and our first duty obviously is to protect our own citizens.
But you never shot them down even when they breached Polish border.
Which underlines my point that we don't have enough to defend ourselves. I've made the point today at the ES conference that we should collectively do more to protect Ukrainian nuclear power plants and to protect the NATO border. Was it President Zelensky who said that there are
existing anti-aircraft systems in Western Europe and beyond that could be brought to where they are needed?
But I try to understand what was the reason not to start helping defend Ukraine, our skies, with other means, with F-16s? Because I remember you personally said that Poland is obliged to shut down rockets and drones when they are approaching Polish border. Because
that's not exactly what I said. Our constitution obliges us to defend our territory.
Yeah, but
and of course it does, and we do defend our territory. But the operation that you mentioned requires some alliance collaboration.
I have to ask about Czech initiative, because just today we've got an information in Gazeta Wyborcza that Poland is not contributing in this armor purchase. What's going on? Could you clarify that?
There is a political decision to contribute, if memory serves, 50 million this year and another 50 million next year. And there are some technical and administrative and legal issues to do with our government agency for strategic reserves. On this issue, the foreign ministry has done what is up to us. I hope my colleagues from other ministries will also make it happen. It will happen.
That's good to hear. And let me change the topic a bit. There is a discussion in Ukraine about returning Ukrainian male persons who are currently abroad and who can be conscripted or even are searched to be conscripted to Ukrainian army. Is there a feasible way to return them back?
Well, I mean, you passed your mobilization law, in my opinion, at least a year too late.
It's best to pass such laws when you still have plenty of volunteers and when people don't feel personally threatened. But yes, it's a bit odd, isn't it? I go to the barber in Warsaw, and my hair is cut by a Ukrainian barber. He seems younger than you, and I ask him, "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be defending your country?" And in Poland, we don't pay such able-bodied refugees social security payments. They have to support themselves or be at work. In Western Europe, they're more generous. And the question is whether there should be financial incentives to be there rather than here. And your government has communicated to us that you want your Ukrainians back, that you need the tax base, you need the people working in the factories, but also you need people to rotate those brave soldiers fighting at the front.
Let me clarify. You refer to incentives. At the same time, is there a feasible way to oblige those people to return? I'm asking that because when I try to analyze international law, I see that it rather denies such a possibility for forceful return of people for mobilization.
I don't regard myself as an expert on this issue, but we've had such emergencies in other countries. You know, when Israel was attacked by Hamas on the 7th of October, if memory serves, thousands of Israelis literally dropped their jobs abroad and rushed to be mobilized.
Voluntarily?
I'm not sure it's voluntary. I'm told, check please, that if you don't show up for an annual reservists exercise in Switzerland or maybe even Finland, you are in danger of losing your citizenship. There are systems, you know.
So it's up to Ukraine to define that system. And what is about Ukrainian Legion, which is discussed? Those who voluntarily form a kind of brigade?
We are ready. We've been ready for some time. We are waiting for the Ukrainian conscripts or volunteers.
I remember there were news that there are already thousands of them who are ready to...
If my information is correct, thousands have registered in your database to update the places of residence.
But they did not show up.
And to make themselves theoretically available. But so far as I know, we don't yet have enough volunteers to make up a brigade.
And the last block of questions is about history. Let's call it, I don't know, can we have a grave deal that should finally solve our grave dispute? Is there something happening in our dialogue that...
Well, I think something should happen. Namely, we should not play politics. There should not be a haggling. There are painful moments in every country's history. Each nations have done things that they are not necessarily proud of. And it goes all kinds of ways. But there is also a Christian duty to bury the dead. And I don't know to what extent your public opinion knows what happened in Volynia, but what happened was that the Ukrainian resistance gave an order
to ethnically cleanse Volhynia of Polish inhabitants. And the means of this ethnic cleansing was widespread massacres, in which between 80 and 120,000 people were murdered. And there were Polish countermeasures too, of course, but it was initiated and the bulk of the victims were Polish residents of Volhynia. And we don't want to make politics out of it, but I'm telling you that it's a live political issue in Poland because these people have descendants, all of the population of those areas was then deported into what is today's Poland. So these people have relatives, they vote. It's a live political issue, and these victims of the massacre require Christian burial. That's all we ask.
It is well covered in Ukraine, but also there is another vision that it's a political dispute which should rather be in hands of historians. So we would not solve it here.
Yes, but when the victims are given Christian burial,
then it will be for historians. But first, you need to exhume them and bury them.
And
do you agree or not?
I'm definitely disagree with another focus. When we hear statements in Poland that with Bandera and Shukhevich, Ukraine would not become member of the EU. Ukrainians treat them as their heroes because history is difficult. Does it mean that if you stick to your position and we stick to ours, our road to the EU is closed?
Every country has the right to its own interpretations of history. That's why, for example, between Poland and Germany, we had this commission on writing history books and history school books in which at least we agree on the facts. And the fact is that Mr. Bandera's organization, I understand he was at the time in a concentration camp, gave the order for a mass extermination of Polish civilians.
So the question is whether we can get to the EU praising these people.
No, you're saying this. I'm not saying it, but I'm saying that you will need friends. You need them now. You will need them in the process of joining the EU. We are asking you to show respect to our war dead. We don't think it's too much to ask.
Thank you, and I very much hope that this also will be dealt with and we will find a way to remain as friendly as we deserve to.
Indeed.